So you'd like to learn about visiting Rocky Mountain National Park without the crowds. Well, I'm happy to help you. You know, crowds can completely change our experience of a national park, making it stressful and feel like we're back in a city. When we really come out here to connect with the natural world, to enjoy the solitude, the silence, the birds singing, the rivers running, it's a magical experience if you can get away from the crowds. Well, I've spent the last 20 years as a professional nature photographer specializing in Rocky Mountain National Park, and I've been able to enjoy that solitude and silence here even on the busiest days of the year. So in this video, I'm going to share with you my 5 top tips for enjoying the park without the crowds. Now, I'm filming this video today in the middle of July, one of the busiest times of the entire year. And yet, as you can see, I was able to drive right up to the entrance station, show my pass. I didn't even need a timed entry permit and able to drive right in. So what is my secret? Why am I able to do that when others can't? I'll tell you. Well, I have now driven up Trail Ridge Road and am at the wildly popular Forest Canyon Overlook. During the day, this trail will be packed, but as you can see, I have it all to myself. Now, why is it that I get to experience the park like this and I can drive right up to the entrance booth without a wait, while everyone else seems to experience the huge crowds of Rocky Mountain National Park? Well, the main trick is to arrive outside of peak hours. This morning, I entered the park at 7 a.m. and I chose to use one of the less busy entrance stations. I entered through Fall River rather than through Beaver Meadows, and that certainly helped as well. But the main thing is arriving early. Most people pour into the national park at about 8 a.m., and then the park remains busy until about 4 p.m. in the afternoon. So if you arrive earlier or come later, or at least get into the park, well into the park, before those crowds arrive at 8 a.m., you're going to have a much better experience and see the park as I do. Like right now, I'm watching a marmot over here. I can look down in the valleys. I can take my pictures. There's no jostling for position. So avoid the peak hours of 8 a.m. until 4 p.m. and you'll have a completely different experience than everyone else. Well, I had a great morning in the national park. I went to a number of places and had them all to myself. But as you can see, I'm now at the Alpine Visitor Center, one of the busiest places in all of Rocky Mountain National Park. When you get here, you've got a couple of options. The first option is to head in and do a little bit of shopping, join the crowds, look at the views. But tip number 2 is actually to do the opposite. We're going to turn this way, head away from the crowds, away from the buildings, the parking lot, and head over to the other side of Trail Ridge Road, where there's a quiet trail waiting just a minute or 2 away, and there'll be almost no one on it. Let's go. So it took me less than 2 minutes to cross the parking lot and end up on a lonely trail by myself. And I can guarantee you, I'm enjoying much better views and much better experience than all of those people who are cramming together. You know, over the years, I've watched the crowds and have found that the crowds really have no idea what they're doing. People see a crowd and the human nature is to gravitate to the crowd, thinking there's something there you don't want to miss. But the truth is, there probably is nothing there of greater importance or interest than what you can find just down the trail. So my advice is ignore the crowds. Don't follow them. Don't be interested in what they're interested in. Head the other direction and you'll find much more interesting things and have a much better experience at the same time. Well, that was a great hike. It was just so peaceful and wonderful. Well, now I'm going to fight through the crowds, get to my car, and the next trick is I'm actually going to head downhill. I'm going to head west. The west side is always much quieter than the east side. And so I'm going to head that direction, head to a trail, and we'll have a great morning in the park. Well, I'm now in the Kawanichi Valley, and I've pulled off at the Colorado River trailhead. How many of you even know about this hike? I'm sure some of you do, but it is not on most people's list of the top 10 hikes. Yet that's the very reason I'm going to do it. I find that most people who visit national parks all head to the same place, as if those places alone have all the magic. The funny thing is that those popular places are so busy, I find them difficult to enjoy. Now, what most people don't realize is that there are 415 square miles of Rocky Mountain National Park, and nearly all of it is wonderful. Now, over the last 20 years, I've explored every little corner of it, and I can say that you can go almost anywhere in this park and experience incredible beauty. It is not confined to the popular places. In fact, I make most of my photos in the least popular and less known areas. I may not get up to the Bear Lake area at all for months at a time, and yet I get to see and experience incredible beauty. Much of it found on quieter trails like this one, and often you don't have to hike in very far. In fact, if you see a trail or some place that you've never heard of, make it a priority to visit it. You'll be amazed by some of the gems that you'll find. Now, if you don't know where to hike to experience these things and to avoid the crowds, then I recommend that you check out my book, Hiking Rocky Mountain National Park, The Essential Guide. You can then read about the various hikes and look at all the photos to get an idea of beautiful new hikes that you need to try. All right, y'all ready? Let's go hiking. Oh, this is glorious. I have the Colorado River all to myself, and such a peaceful, wonderful day in the mountains. I can hear the birds singing and the water gurgling. Can't think of anything better. Well, I know some of you would really like to visit those top places in the park that you see on Instagram or that people talk about. Well, it's possible to do that even without the crowds, but it's not easy. Now, if you're determined to see those places and you want to see them without the crowds, I see two options. The first is to leave dark and early and to arrive at those locations by sunrise. For that, you're going to need a headlamp. Don't rely on your phone's light. And you're also going to need a very good sense of direction and a map to make sure that you arrive safely. Now, if you arrive at sunrise, there may just be another photographer there or a climber on their way to summit a peak, but otherwise you'll have those gorgeous places all to yourself at the most beautiful time of day. It's spectacular. That's the time that I like to visit. But not everyone wants to get up at 3 in the morning to get to such places on time. And if you don't want to get up early, then the only other option that I see is to visit during the off season. And because snow covers these areas for much of the year and makes them somewhat inaccessible and some of them dangerous to get to, I would recommend visiting during October and November. That's a much quieter time of year and can be very, very beautiful. So head up to those popular places during October and November or very early in the morning. And if you don't want to do that, then do what I do and enjoy the quieter trails in Rocky Mountain National Park. You are not missing out by doing that. Now, my fourth tip is to avoid visiting Rocky Mountain National Park on the weekends. Now, Rocky Mountain National Park is closer than most other national parks to a major metropolitan area. In fact, Colorado's Front Range, from Colorado Springs up to Fort Collins, has 5 million people. And on the weekends, those people are free from work and love to come up here to the national park. And so it can get very, very busy during the weekends. So my suggestion is to avoid the weekends if at all possible. Now, if I want to visit on the weekends, I come very early in the morning and know that I'll still be encountering a lot of other people who are coming early in the morning, or I come quite late and I know there'll still be quite a few other people out there. But those are the less busy times during the weekends. But otherwise, avoid the weekends if you can. Now, my final tip is that you hike back about a mile on almost any trail in the national park and you'll see the crowds will quickly diminish. I find that most hikers don't really go beyond half a mile from the trailhead. So if you can hike a little bit beyond that, you'll start to experience the solitude and serenity that I get to experience out here. Now, there are a couple of exceptions to this. Most of the trails around the Bear Lake Corridor, the Longs Peak Trail, and the Wild Basin Trail up to Ouzel Falls, all of those could be quite busy up to the main destinations. But for all the other trails in the park, you'll generally find that they get really quiet the further you get on. Well, that's one of the main tools that I use for my photography and for my personal well-being, just to get alone and enjoy the beauty, silence, and solitude of Rocky Mountain National Park. Well, these 5 tips are the main things that I use to escape the crowds in Rocky Mountain National Park, and they've afforded me more silence and solitude than probably anyone. I hope you found at least one of these tips helpful. If you have other suggestions for avoiding the crowds, please put them in the comments. I'm sure others would love to read them, as would I. And if you're enjoying the videos that I'm putting out, please stop by my gallery in downtown Estes Park and let us know. It would be a real encouragement. Well, thanks so much for watching. I'll see all of you next week. To help you prepare for your visit to Rocky Mountain National Park, visit my website, rockymountainnationalpark.com. For hiking guides, calendars, coffee table books, and more, visit rockytrailpress.com. And when you arrive, be sure and stop by my gallery in downtown Estes Park. It's called Images of RMNP.